Hello and welcome back. Today I wanted to do a quick review on this saber. This is the Reborn Saber from Saberforge. Now this is a slightly older model. The newer ones though make use of much the same design. This is the standalone model, not the ASP model. I'll talk about the difference between those in just a moment. But it's a pretty nice saber, so let me talk about the basic design and what it's set to accomplish. So the Reborn Saber is modeled after one of Darth Revan's sabers, actually Darth Revan's primary saber. This is the saber that you see in green on the cover of the book Revan, and the saber that you see hanging from his belt and in use if you find him on the Old Republic game. Not the Knights of the Old Republic. I'll talk about that one in a moment, but just the Old Republic game, he's going to be using this. The basic design of this saber, it's a solid tube that's narrow down at the base, thicker up at the top, has some accent rings, and it has these rather distinctive spikes. The spikes come to a point here, come down flat here, have a bevel or a divot right here, a little prong at the end, and then they go back back towards the handle. All right, now this saber, in terms of use, it's a little bit difficult to use simply because if you grip up here where most people grip a saber, these spikes make things much wider, so you've got to have a bigger hand in order to be able to use this thing. If you grip down here, then it's actually not too much wider than any other saber would be, because where these side spikes or side bars get thin, it doesn't add too much to the girth of the saber, but it does up here. One thing about construction on this, these bars are a single piece. Now I mentioned that this was the standalone versus the ASP. In the ASP, they've divided these bars out into different pieces so that you can have a screw-on emitter, a screw-on midsection, switch section, etc. So they've got the bars sort of chopped up. In the standalone, the bar is one piece from top to bottom. It's secured by two screws here and here. What that does mean, though, is that down here towards the base, this bar is not secured to the hilt at all, and I can lift it up and let it clack back down on the hilt. That does create a weak spot right here where it's thin, and I have heard of people snapping or breaking these bars with use. Another thing about the features of this, or the design of this, it's got a couple little screw-in grommets right here. Now these serve no functional purpose. They're just decorative, they're like you see on the game, but as the saber gets older and it gets a little bit more in use, these things are screwed in and they will start to unscrew, loosen up, and rattle. You wrap a little Teflon tape around that, screw them back in, they're fine. The pommel for this, most of the design that you see is actually the hilt, which is one solid piece. It's not ASP, it's one machined tube and these three bars. The pommel is very low profile. This bit right here is all that really stands out on the hilt. The rest of it screws in to the hilt so that you don't really see the pommel at all. So while the pommel is ASP, the pommel is kind of a non-entity. Alright, so very angular design. This one is weathered. I mentioned that the design on this is based off of the Revan Saber in Knights of the Old Republic and off the book. When Revan dual wields, you'll also see this saber in the Black Series action figure toy as well. But when Revan dual wields, you end up with one of these, the Reborn, and one of these, which is a Saberforge Fallen. So they're kind of made to work together as a set, and they work really well that way. If you're going for the Knights of the Old Republic look, Revan actually uses two of this saber. One purple, one red. But this thing is a neat design. I like it. It's a little bit difficult to use, but it definitely makes a statement. Let me go ahead and give you a close-up look at this before I say any more. In terms of electronics, these are offered with most of their electronics set up. A Warrior tier, which is a 12-watt LED with batteries and no sound. A Champion tier, which is the sound, which is what this one has. And a Hero tier, which has the ability to color change. The Champion tier on this, I have mine on mute, but let me go ahead and just show you here. If I have the kill key in, I've got reviews that have this Champion board reviewed elsewhere, but if I have the kill key in, there's no draw on the battery, no problem. Pull out the kill key. Board boots up. I currently have this saber on mute because I didn't want it to override my voice on the video. but there we go. It's a pretty bright blade. You're seeing some shimmer here, but that's because of the blade that I've got in here. It's just as bright as a Saberforge usually is. Alright, so very nice saber. I'm very happy with it as part of my Revan set. You're seeing it here with a 3/4 inch Aurora blade from Ripper Blades. Cover Tech wheel on this thing comes standard. Used to be that Saberforge were really the only ones who made this design, but these days Vader's Vault and Ultra Sabers are making them as well. The Ultra Sabers one is much larger, so while this is hard to wield, the Ultra Sabers one is even more difficult. You want to be either using it double-handed or you want to have really large hands. And Vader's Vault has just released one of these that is roughly the same size, a little bit smaller. But the Saberforge one was one of the first mass market to the market. There were a few short runs of other ones before this, but this was, for the longest time, really the only available version of the Reborn hilt, and it's a pretty solid one. So here you have it. The Revan set. Reborn and Fallen. Right? If this review has helped, then please join me back for more, and I will see you next time.